Thank you very much for tuning in to the 50 subs special. First, I would like to thank each and every one of you for the subs. I very much appreciate it. Without you, this video would have actually most likely stayed mothballed as a project awaiting completion. So, without further delay, I would like to share with you today one of my favorite historical figures, someone I look up to very much. He's been known by many names over the course of history, including God of War, Hero of the Imjin War, the Martial Lord of Loyalty, the Admiral, and the greatest naval commander of all time, etc. And most likely, you've never heard of him before today. I would like to introduce you to Yi SunShin. Playing through the game EU4, Europa Universalis, as the nation of Korea, you will come across an event during hostilities with the newly unified nation of Japan. This event introduces you to a military commander by the name of Yi SunShin, and if given the position of naval command, is the best naval commander in the game, arguably, boasting full sixes in all stats, as well as a very powerful trait called Ironsides, and additional ship durability as well. Many may as well say, well, why this guy? Who I never heard of. Why is he the best admiral in the game? Well, the following is a very brief summary of his life, very brief, and a description of his greatest feats, including his famous last stand battle, which would make the Spartan king Leonidas nod with respect. Yi SunShin was born in 1545 as a member of the upper class in Korea. At the age of 28, he took the military exams to become an officer. Due to breaking his leg during the exam being thrown from his horse, he failed his first attempt, and on his second attempt became a military officer at the age of 32. From there, he quickly rose through the ranks until he was given command of a northern border fort. Due to his reputation for being rigorous, efficient, diligent, and incorruptible, this border fort became the best run in the north. After the brass took notice, he was moved to the capital city and given a position as an instructor at the military academy. Since the military had corrupt elements, which used the military to advance nobility through the ranks quickly to more of command staff, he was transferred to a naval garrison, taking command with no previous naval experience. And as a side note, it's actually unknown if he had any experience whatsoever when it comes to boats or even the ocean prior to this. A corrupt official, which he had previously encountered, later falsified reports to have Yi removed from the army. Once vindicated, a few months later, he was reinstated to the army, but at a low position for an officer. After Yi's father passed away, he took a 3-year leave from the army per traditional Confucius mourning periods and returned to the army subsequently, immediately after being transferred to a fort garrison. Again schemed against by corrupt officials, he was jailed, tortured, and sent to the capital city to stand trial. He was demoted after a trial to a common foot soldier, and finally, he requested to retire. It was at this time in 1587 that Yi's childhood friend, who is now the prime minister, recognized a growing threat to the east and aided Yi to rise quickly back up through the ranks to a naval command position by 1591. At this time, the Isles of Japan had concluded the Sengoku Dai period, which is the 100 Years Civil War, and were united under Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Having goals to expand the Japanese empire westward, Hideyoshi planned to conquer Korea and used the peninsula to stage an invasion of Ming China. This is where Admiral Yi's true story begins and where his actions shaped the future of Asia forever. Yi used his time in the Navy and in his command position to construct the famous Turtle Ship, one of the first iterations of an ironclad battleship in history. It was a shallow runner warship with spiked iron shielding on the top, 360-degree cannon coverage, and a large brass dragon figurehead, which shoots flames, bellows toxic smoke, or has a large cannon in its mouth. Also, it was used as a ramming ship designed to withstand crashing into enemy ships at high speed, and was able to construct one working model shortly after the beginning of the first invasion force. Also, he trained his men and updated his tactics for the impending war. In 1592, the first Japanese had sailed to the shores of Korea. He was able to rendezvous with the remnants of the other surviving forces and accumulated 45 warships to go ahead and engage the invading Japanese force. Having never commanded a naval battle, he sailed in and engaged a fleet of anchored Japanese vessels raiding a coastal village. Of the vessels, he sunk 26 of them, with only one injured Korean soldier. He continued his operations, pursuing the Japanese fleet wherever they were spotted, and sunk a total of 43 more ships. He was then promoted, and after he was promoted, his position became the general commander of the Southern Navy. He continued his successful naval operations while the land army was continuing to be pushed back. At this time, one of the top 5 largest naval battles in human history occurred at Hansando Island, when Commander Wakisaka of the Japanese forces set off with his 73 warships. Yi used his continuous naval tactics training and his knowledge of the seas to defeat Wakisaka. Wakisaka set off with 73 warships to engage Admiral Yi's 56. He feigned retreat and encircled the Japanese fleet in a formation he developed called the Crane's Wing, which subsequently was later developed into the modern naval tactic called crossing the T. Once the battle had ceased, 47 of the Japanese ships were sunk, 12 captured, and 14 escaped, with no Korean deaths or ships lost. The remaining 2 Japanese admirals entrenched at the harbor in Busan, which was sieged by Yi subsequently. After many of Yi's soldiers were injured during this engagement, the Japanese fleet was finally sunk, with the remaining ships left spared to allow the survivors of the sunk vessels to flee versus being trapped in Korea. Again betrayed by corrupt officials, he was imprisoned and tortured again for refusing to follow imperial order, which was a Japanese trap designed to surprise the Korean fleet. The corrupt official, then taking command of Yi's fleet, fell into the Japanese trap, and all but 12 Korean vessels were sunk. With only 12 ships remaining left in the Korean Navy, Yi was freed from jail and reinstated to his position, only to be given the imperial order to dissolve the Navy and reinforce the land army. Refusing this order, he actually wrote to the imperial court, and this is what he said. This humble subject still has 12 ships. However small the number is, I swear I will be able to defend the sea if I prepare myself for death to resist the enemy. Yi then decided on the Strait of Myeongyang for his last stand, due to it being narrow and having a current with shifts every few hours. It was here that David truly faced Goliath. Over 300 ships, which consisted of 133 Japanese warships and 170 plus troop carrier and boarding vessels, which were also supply ships, descended on Yi. His other ships, being too scared to fight, fell back, and Yi's flagship alone anchored in the center of the strait, fighting for almost 3/4 of the battle, repelling wave after wave of attack. Of the Japanese fleet of over 300 ships, 31 were sunk, again with Yi not losing a single ship in the battle, and the battle ending with the Japanese in retreat. After this, the Chinese Navy agreed to finally work with the Korean Navy on offensive operations instead of just guarding ports. Seeing Yi's amazing successes accumulate, they did so in a very quick fashion. After this, the last of the Japanese forces in Sunshine attempted to escape and were pursued by Yi's fleet in the Noryang Strait, where the final battle of the Indian War was fought. The Japanese armada of 500 ships fought the combined Chinese and Korean fleet of 150. Outnumbered over 3 to 1, Yi and the Chinese fleet fought through the night, through rough firearms and close combat, gunfire and sparking swords. Beating the war drum himself, Yi's ships pursued the Japanese. Suddenly, a stray bullet hit Yi, and he fell to the ground. Yi's son and his nephew came to his aid, and with his dying breath, he said, "We are about to win this war. Keep beating the drum. Do not let anyone know of my death." His son and his nephew then took command of his vessel and took control of the remainder of the battle in Yi's place. Once the battle finished and the Chinese commander arrived at Yi's ship to speak with him after the battle, he found Yi's son instead of Yi. He threw himself to the deck and said these words, "Even in death, you saved my life." 300 Japanese ships were destroyed or captured, and the Japanese fully retreated after this battle. Although driven by a desire to protect his people, he died moments before seeing his dream become reality. The Chinese admiral wrote Yi's eulogy personally, and the imperial court then tried to make amends for their treatment of him in his life. Constantly betrayed, backstabbed, he maintained his resolve. He clawed his way back up every time he was pushed down. Until the end, he never gave up, and he gave his life to protect his people. If this one man did not exist, Japan would have invaded China by the early 1600s. Asia would not exist as it does today. One man was able to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies and gain their respect ultimately. One man took a small force, completely disabled the entire Japanese Navy. I will end with a quote from Admiral Togo Hayashiro. He's the father of modern Japanese naval doctrine and was the commander of the Japanese fleet during the Russo-Japanese War, prior to World War II. "It may be proper to compare me with Nelson," referring to Admiral Horatio Nelson, "but not with Korea's Yi SunShin, for he has no equal. Nelson and I both fought battles with full support from the government, but Yi achieved victory without any government support. Compared to General Yi, I am but a petty officer." And that, I think, is going to wrap it up. I really wanted to thank you for sitting through this and watching it, if you still are. Admiral Yi SunShin is known in Korea as the Martial Lord of Loyalty and is one of Korea's cultural heroes. He's one of my personal heroes because in the face of adversity, he never gave up. And he always forged a path forward. And because of that one man, history in Asia was completely changed for the centuries to come. Because of that one man, the Japanese were unable to complete their goals of conquest in the late 1500s. Because of that one man, Japanese history was forever changed after the death of Hideyoshi. So, anyways, again, thanks for watching. Thank you very much for sitting through this, and I very much appreciate you guys. This was the 50 sub special. I'm going to go ahead and start prepping for the stream later on today. Of course, I stream every day, and if you are interested in No Man's Sky, I definitely suggest you come by and hang out during the stream. We're always having good conversations. Thank you very, very, very much for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace out, guys.